Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to compare the Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki of Japan, world's first novel, and Shahnameh by Ferdowsi, the longest poem by a single author. You might be surprised that despite their obvious differences, they have a lot in common. You might ask why compare these two. You're right, they couldn't be more different. Shahnameh is somewhat similar to the Game of Thrones, written by a man and mostly for men, and the Tale of Genji on the other hand is somewhat similar to 50 Shades of Grey, written by women and most likely for women. What interested me first was the fact that they both were written at the same time, around 1010, which is like 1,000 years ago. But the main reason for comparison is the place they hold in their respective language and culture. When you think of Japanese or Persian literature, these two books are the first on the list and people are very proud of them. I made videos talking about them individually, so you can watch them here on this channel. Okay, before we compare these two, let me tell you briefly about the authors and the books. Lady Murasaki worked at the Heian court in Kyoto as a poet and a tutor to a young princess. We don't know her real name, and in fact all the characters in the Tale of Genji are nameless, only referred by their ranks. Ferdowsi was born in Tus in northeastern Iran, or Khorasan as it was called back then, and was a landowner and spent his entire life writing the Shahnameh to leave a personal legacy for himself and a cultural legacy for the Persian people. The Tale of Genji tells the story of a prince called Genji and his romantic adventures with women. He's good looking, a good poet, and a very sensitive man. This book basically follows his life and then his son's life, mainly focusing on their romantic adventures. Shahnameh, as the name suggests, is a book about kings. It's a collection of myths and stories of the Persian people from the first month to the Arab invasion in 650, covering thousands of years. Divided into three sections, mythical, heroic, and historical, so it contains a lot of myths, legends, heroes, and some history too. The main hero of the book is the Herculean Rostam. Now let's compare these two books. As we know, both were written around the same time. Shahnameh was finished in 1010 and Genji was finished around 1008, but it was disputed, so maybe around the same time. So both books are 1,000 years old. Shahnameh is written entirely in verse, some 50,000 rhyming couplets to make it easy for people to memorize, as most people couldn't read back then. Genji is written in prose with some 800 poems. Both are pretty long, about 1,300 pages in English translation. Shahnameh is written in Persian, so Iranians, Tajiks, and Afghans understand 90 or 95% of it, which is remarkable given it's 1,000 years old. Genji is written in court Japanese, so highly formal, therefore modern Japanese readers read it through translation. Shahnameh has 62 stories, Genji has 54 chapters. In both cases, the stories or chapters can be read separately. Both holds records, Genji for being the first psychological novel and Shahnameh for the longest poem by a single author. Shahnameh is set in Iran, but mainly in Khorasan, which is northeastern Iran, northern Afghanistan, and Central Asia, mainly around river Oxus. Genji is set in western Japan, mainly in and around Kyoto. Khorasan in Arabic means the land of the sun. Japan in Chinese means the land of the rising sun. So both places had politically and to some extent culturally stronger neighbors to the west at the time of writing, whom they looked up to, or in the case of Ferdowsi, looked away. So there is the connection, the sun. So both works mainly looked to the east, away from their western neighbors. Both works were illustrated in the centuries that followed. Genji was first illustrated in the 12th century and later in 15th and 16th centuries. Shahnameh was illustrated in the 13th century during the Mughal Ilkhanate. Both works are the best examples of their respective illustration paintings. The Tale of Genji is based on Buddhist idea that life is full of suffering and all its aspects, be it love or politics. Shahnameh is based on Zoroastrian philosophy of one god in two forces, good and evil, construction and destruction. Both works depict the passage of time. In Shahnameh, good times come to an end too quickly, and then you have to work hard to build it again. Continuous construction and destruction. In the Tale of Genji, Genji's romantic feelings are fleeting from one woman to the next, so there is no everlasting happiness in either work. Shahnameh deals with wars, violence, and endless instability, and some romances as well. Genji has no wars. Shahnameh is set in the part of the world that looks like a corridor between all these different empires and civilizations, so the narrative centers on keeping the Persians safe. Genji is set on an island that has never been invaded by foreign forces. Also, it was written by a woman who says that politics is not for women. Genji does become a political figure towards the end, but the focus always is love, not war. Shahnameh has many heroes, but Rostam appears to be the main one if you push me against the wall. He is half Iranian and half Kabuli. Genji's father is an emperor and mother a concubine. This half thing is plenty in Shahnameh. All the major heroes have a foreign mother. Japanese are fascinated by mixed race kids, often exoticized in the media today. Not sure in Iran now, but certainly in olden days, halves were much fuller than full. I don't know if that makes sense. Shahnameh deals with people who are too proud. I guess when you have to fight, you have to be boastful and trash talk to your enemies. Genji, there's a lot of silence and silent sufferings. Being selfless, especially Genji's beloved wife Murasaki. Her silent suffering is pretty powerful and seems to give Genji a lot to think about. In Shahnameh, true kings and their sons have something called far, like a shining halo. Hikaru Genji simply means a shining Genji. His face radiates something that women go crazy about. His illegitimate son with his father's wife too has this look. Shahnameh has a lot of artificial sounds like horns, drums, and so forth. But Genji has a lot of natural sound like insects, rain, and clothes. A lot of silences too, meaningful silences. In Shahnameh, people express their feelings and opinions verbally and openly. In Genji, they read their gestures, manners, the way one walks. If they don't help, then they answer in poetry. Neither book has a real plot, so kind of meanders from one story to the next, a sequence of events. Shahnameh as a whole may not have a plot, but there are plenty of stories that keep you on the edge. Rostam Sohrab, Rostam Sfendiyar, Siawash, to name a few. And the Tale of Genji, Lady Rakujo's curse is pretty scary, but the rest it reads like a diary than a thriller. Shahnameh was written in reaction to Arab-Muslim invasion, so for those who wanted to revive Persian language and culture, he's quite open about it. The Tale of Genji was written at the time when the Chinese language was the language of literature in Japan, and Murasaki says that Chinese is too coarse and masculine for women, so she advised women to use the feminine Japanese. Both works are said to contain very few loanwords from Arabic and Chinese respectively. Both books signal a shift from their dominant foreign language to the local language, like the Canterbury Tales from French to English. One of the biggest differences is dualism, dividing the world into good and evil. Shahnameh is based on Zoroastrianism that divides the world into two forces, construction and destruction, good and bad, which was later adopted by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Genji, on the other hand, makes no clear distinctions between the two. The scariest character is Lady Rakujo, but one can say Genji could be a villain too. But all the characters have some redeeming qualities and some shortcomings. This is a Taoistic or Buddhist view. You are neither this nor that, but both. Both books are used to promote national identity in Iran and Japan. In Iran, numerous dynasties adopted the book as a source of pride of Persian civilization. But current regime doesn't promote it very openly, as it contradicts with its Islamic identity. In Japan, especially after the Meiji ended the 250 years of isolation, Genji was seen as truly depicting the spirit of Japanese people, and some intellectuals questioned China and the West for not having such a great literary masterpiece in their history. The Tale of Genji is much better known in the West. If you look at goodreads.com, the ratings and reviews for Genji is double of Shahnameh's. This is not scientific, but a good indication. I think the main reason is that Japanese literature is taught in more universities around the world than Persian literature. Also, Genji is easier to translate since it was written in prose. Shahnameh, on the other hand, written in verse and very much tied to the Persian language in its musicality and rhythmic sound, so translation may not convey those qualities. Also, Shahnameh depicts Iranian as the good guys, non-Iranians as the bad guys, while Genji, the focus is on romance, something quite universal. Also, these days most readers are women. My recommendation is to read both, of course. Shahnameh is an easy read, with some amazing dragons, ogres, demons, and a king with two snakes growing on his shoulders, and a horse that is smaller than human. You might need a map of the area, as the story takes place in many different parts of Iran and Afghanistan, Central Asia, and Rome and Turkey and all sorts of places. Reading Genji is a more serious endeavor to understand the Heian court, so most people read it for scholarly reasons. I alternated between the two, one chapter from each. This was fun, like one moment watching an action movie and the next a romance. This comparison was just for the sake of understanding, so not meant to say that one is better than the other. I love them both. They are both amazing works of literature and the whole world should be proud of them. Anyway, despite their differences, they do share a lot. No matter where you live or what period in history, humans have always struggled with the question of meaning in their lives. These two books illustrate that we're all the same, despite speaking different languages, wearing different clothes, or worshipping different gods. We all want to be happy and live a meaningful life, and that's the main theme of these two books. Let me know if you want me to compare another two classics of world literature. I'm on a journey to read books and stories from every country on earth, so please make suggestions for books from your country. Also tag along by subscribing and sharing. Thank you and happy reading.